So thank you for having me here. We talk about human-to-human marketing. And what's interesting about that is that we talk a lot about the second H, which is the customer and customer experience. But we don't talk enough about the first H, the first human in the equation, which is your own company, your own employees, and your own culture. Both those H's are critical to make digital transformation work and make all these buzzwords happen in a way that actually creates a great experience for your customer so that they talk to you and not competitors. So what I want to talk about today is what I personally went through in modernizing Dun & Bradstreet marketing and how that applies to you and marketing modernization in general. And the reason why I want to talk within that context is I want to be very, very practical, because the practical challenges is what all of you are facing versus buzzwords. Because, as my CEO had told me my first month, the buzzwords don't pay the bills, right? Sales and growth and great customer experience do. So let me set up the situation that I faced in modernizing my marketing. A new CEO was put in place at Dun & Bradstreet in October of 2013. Before that, and it's an iconic company. Dun & Bradstreet has been around for 175 years. But before that, the company wasn't growing, but our industry was growing tremendously, which is data and analytics, which all of you face this every single day. The challenge that we had was to grow the company and modernize the company, leveraging everything that was talked about in that video. So I came in as CMO with that task, coming from Dell, where I ran digital marketing. And what I found was very interesting. My gut reaction was to jump right into marketing technology, marketing automation, content marketing, data, analytics, because that's what I did at Dell, and that's why I was hired. And I was told, grow the company, and I wanted to jump right into the execution of how to grow. But unfortunately, that's not how it happens in real life. And that forgets that first H, the human, meaning your own company and your own culture. Because whether you're a small or a large company, this is what we face. And we face both ends of the spectrum. First is scale. If you're a mid-sized to large company, when you modernize the company, you can't just do it in a small way. It has to materially impact the company in order to make these big changes and big investments. Or you may be a startup and have no scale, and that's even a bigger task of how do you actually get in front of your customer in this new environment. Secondly, aversion to risk. I mean, this is something that we all face no matter what the size of the company. People they understand that we need to do all this cool marketing modernization, but they don't want to take the risk to do so. And lastly, bureaucracy. Either too much or not enough, whether you're small or big. And we all know what this is. Large processes, complex business case funding methodologies, all these kind of things that prevent us from modernizing our marketing. So I call these the initial conditions, and all of us face it. And what I found was that rather than jump right in to the execution, and frankly, the stuff that I love, and the stuff that my career was built on, it didn't matter how much and how well I executed if I didn't have the right culture, the right processes, and the employees within the enterprise didn't understand the culture that was needed and the processes that were needed to make that human-to-human transformation happen. And so I stepped back for a second. And I had to talk to our board about this and our CEO about this. And it was scary, but necessary. And I took a 3-step approach to really modernizing marketing. And so I'm going to talk a bit about this slide, which I found was critical to making this marketing modernization. And before I jump in, it's been about 2.5 years since I began this journey and since the company began this journey. And it's been a tough one, and Mike and Vicky will attest to that. But we've already seen great results. So 3 years ago, we weren't growing. Now we've been growing over the last 2.5 years. Our investors are happy, our board is happy, and our stock is at an all-time high. So this works. And it was a big change for a 175-year-old company. So let me jump into the process we went to. And again, both those H's matter. Number one is what I call brand and culture. So as a company, we needed to attack those initial conditions. And the first one was culture, bureaucracy, process. But the bigger problem was employees around the world could not articulate in the same way what we did, why we did it for customers, and why we were differentiated from our competition. Now, those seem like easy questions, but I would challenge all of you to actually talk to all of your employees around the world. You'll be surprised how different answers you'll hear, and I certainly did. I also talked to our customers, our partners, influential people in the industry, analysts, press. They all said very different things. So I asked myself the question, how can we actually execute modern marketing if we all didn't understand exactly what we did? Because again, you can't create a content marketing strategy if you don't even know your purpose and how you're differentiated. So we talked to customers, influencers, employees, a whole host of people. And we got a firm understanding of what their needs are. We also looked at not just where the world is today, which there are a lot of buzzwords, but also where the world is going. But not people saying, okay, here's where we are today, here's where it's going, but people, I actually talked to the people who define the future of our industry. And through that process, as well as looking at ourselves, we got to a very strong understanding of what our purpose was, as well as what our values should be to define our culture, to attack those initial conditions, as well as our go-to-market strategy. And we spent a lot of time educating employees on these 3 things. And I would say that that first step was so critical to making the fun stuff that we all love, the technology piece, happen. Now, here's the interesting thing. For a company of our size, of our history, 200-year history, and iconic in the B2B space, these type of changes take many, many years because we're talking to a lot of people. We actually did it in less than 8 months. And I would say that the reason why that worked was that it forced us to take bold moves in terms of what our purpose is. But frankly, it also prevented us from trying to appease everyone. Because when you try to appease everyone, everything gets watered down, and you end up with a purpose, et cetera, that appeases everyone but doesn't really differentiate yourself or give a bold direction for the company. So that short time frame was very critical, and you'll see that as a theme throughout this presentation in terms of how we went to market, as well as how we leveraged technology, content, digital, et cetera, to really grow the company. What was interesting is, even within the 6-month period after we launched, almost immediately, our employees changed their perception of the company. All the employee surveys showed that employees felt much more connected. They felt like they understood what we did. They felt much more motivated. But that wasn't enough. We also changed and put our money where our mouth is. So, we changed our HR policies. We divested businesses that didn't go along with our purpose. We changed the way we structured the company. But those things are so critical to show the employees that you mean what you're trying to do. And it was a great change for us. Now, once we had that purpose, that set of values, and obviously the creative expression behind that, we really focused on the second H, the people that we sold to. And that's the second box, which is our go-to-market strategy. We dramatically changed the way we went to market. We did what, the buzzword is persona marketing, but it was a little bit simpler than that, where we defined specifically the people, the humans that we target for our solutions. Now that is a big change for us, and that's a big change for a lot of companies, because most companies focus on the products they sell, the technologies they sell, what they do. We kind of flipped that whole model, which was a big shift for the culture of the company, because we realized that in order to make the H2H happen and make the technology, content, digital work, we need to be very clear on who we targeted. So we defined the people that we target. We had 6 for us. And we started first with them, their pain points, what they faced, and a lot of times they weren't decision makers. So we talk a lot about how teachers, administrators, et cetera, influence the decision making, although they may not be the final people who sign the check. We included those folks as well. But then again, such a shift for a company, how do we do it in a practical way? And I know you've been hearing this throughout the conference. It was more of a test and learn. So what we did was I mentioned 6 personas. We actually focused on just one. The reason why we focused on just one initially and kind of blew that out in this new process is to demonstrate to the company how this worked and that it actually worked. And we communicated it to the rest of the company. And that's very critical, is starting small, starting with one persona, showing success, and then moving to the next one, and the next one, and the next one. Once we've demonstrated how this works and that it actually works, this new go-to-market strategy. Now, the interesting thing about this is that we saw a huge change within those personas from a customer satisfaction perspective, from a connection to the company. All the surveys improved when we moved to this persona-based strategy. But we actually went a step further. Once we kind of demonstrated, even for the first couple personas that they actually worked, we actually changed the organization of our company. So for example, we used to have a monolithic product organization. We actually ended up breaking that up into smaller, more agile organizations around the personas that we had defined in marketing. That was a big fundamental shift around the company. And we started to take that approach across all our divisions within the company. Now, that's critical to orient the company around the customer versus around the products. And you can imagine 3 years in, we started changing our product portfolio based on the customer pain points. We started changing our content strategy around the humans we sold to versus the products we sold. It just shifts the whole mentality of the company, where some of our newest, best product ideas came from building content to do marketing based on the pain points of the customer, as well as some of our decisions to exit products or consolidate products. So that change in orientation to the persona-based marketing was critical. Now let's go to the fun stuff, the stuff that we talked about in the video, which is pipeline growth, company growth, et cetera. Now, once you and the culture has a clear understanding of what the company does and why we do it and why we're differentiated, and once we had a clearer understanding of the personas and the go-to-market strategy, that really guided our approach to how we leveraged technology, data, and content to grow the company. But again, it was a test and learn approach, which I encourage all of you to do. And it was a very measured test and learn approach. So the first persona we picked, which for us was the chief marketing officer, we actually, the approach that we took was, we're not going to do a broad-based marketing campaign and go full force initially. We actually leveraged our data and analytics, and you know data is going to come into this, to actually determine the first 10 accounts we were going to go after. Just 10, not 100, not 1,000, just 10. We used our data to build models to understand, now that we knew what our purpose is, why we're differentiated, and we knew the pain points of, for us, the chief marketing officer as a customer, then we said which companies, whether our existing customers or completely new customers, have the highest propensity to buy this solution based on our knowledge of the pain points. And we just picked 10. And we used those 10, and it wasn't scalable, and we started to just go after those 10. We started building content for those 10. We started meeting them at conferences. We started targeting them digitally, and we started growing those accounts. Once we were able to demonstrate success with those early accounts, even though none of it was scalable, it was very manual initially, that allowed the culture and the company and the budgeting process to scale. Then we went to the next 100, 200, 1,000, and then we scaled it all up. So a great example with those early 10 accounts is, we went to those early 10 accounts and we said, and a great example of how this scales up, a very tactical one, but very practical, is that we went to those early accounts and a few of the CMOs said, help us with digital marketing. How does data help with digital marketing? We did custom workshops, non-scalable, to those initial customers. They were very successful. Then we started doing, as we scaled to the next 100, we started doing regional workshops on digital marketing. Then we started doing webinars. And then we started doing big events. And so that's how this stuff scales when you have this test and learn. Another thing we did was communication. So we, I did this hilarious thing called Project Benjamin, where I challenged our sales team, our employees, to tell stories of the first 100 customers that we engaged in this approach. And we built 100 case studies in 100 days. And we communicated those stories across the company to, again, talk about how digital technology content helped grow those accounts so that we got buy-in, the culture, everyone was around growing. So again, this is a very critical, so some of the themes that you'll see here is culture, go-to-market, but also, lastly and most important, test and learn. Really starting small and then scaling what you do. Fundamental to all this, clearly, are the things that we talked about. But I would say at the core is a strong data-driven approach. So the one thing we did focus a lot on was how do we make sure that we're targeting the right set of accounts and focusing our efforts in the right way initially. So we did spend time understanding our data, making sure that we had strong data on which to build our models, and then building the right models to prioritize the right set of accounts to go after, whether it's the first 10, the first 100, first 1,000. And obviously we refined those as we saw what worked and what didn't work. That focused approach kind of stacks the deck to make sure that you have those initial successes with the right companies. It also uncovers a lot of things that you wouldn't expect. Like, for example, we saw that some of our biggest opportunities were not in our new logos, but in our existing accounts where we were selling something else.